Trump begs Traoré for help. Traoré responds. Before we dive into this story, hit the comment. Tell us your city, let's see how far the story reached. If you like the video, don't forget to subscribe. The news broke like thunder across the global stage. Donald Trump had placed a desperate midnight call to Ibrahim Traoré, the young and fiery leader of Burkina Faso. For years, Western leaders had dismissed him as a radical, an idealist, or even a threat to the world order. But now the balance of power had shifted so sharply that the unthinkable had happened. Trump, once the most powerful man in the world, was asking for help. The world in crisis. The international economy was on the brink. Inflation gnawed at American. Households, debt ceilings had become political theater, and the dollar's once untouchable dominance was starting to wobble. In contrast, Africa, led by bold moves from countries like Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, was carving a new economic path. Under Traoré's leadership, Burkina Faso had withdrawn from the CFA franc, severed ties with decades of French exploitation, and launched initiatives to back their currency with gold, cobalt, and oil. These policies, ridiculed at first, were now showing results. Gold reserves surged, trade alliances formed with Russia, China, and other emerging economies. Farmers, miners, and ordinary citizens felt for the first time that the wealth of their land might actually benefit them rather than foreign powers. And while Western governments debated austerity and stimulus packages, Africa's resource-backed currency was becoming an attractive alternative. Midnight in Ouagadougou was just past. Midnight in Ouagadougou. President Ibrahim Traoré sat in his modest office, papers spread across the wooden desk. The young captain-turned-leader carried the weight of a nation on his shoulders, yet his face betrayed little fatigue. His aide rushed in with a secure phone. "Mr. President," the aide said quietly, "it's Donald Trump. He insists on speaking with you." Traoré raised an eyebrow. "Trump?" "Yes. He says it is urgent." Traoré gestured for the phone. He pressed it to his ear, hearing that unmistakable New York drawl. "President Traoré, thank you for taking this call," Trump said. His voice was serious, stripped of its usual bravado. "I'll get straight to the point. America is in trouble. The dollar is collapsing faster than anyone predicted. Inflation is killing us. We need stability. And whether people want to admit it or not, you have it. You have the gold, the resources, and the vision." There was a pause. The silence stretched, almost daring Trump to continue. "I need your help," Trump finally said. "We need a deal, something that can save us both." For a long moment, Traoré said nothing. He leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled, eyes fixed on the map of Africa on the wall. Trump, the man who once boasted of American supremacy, was now pleading. "Mr. Trump," Traoré began, his tone calm but edged with steel. "For decades, Africa has been told it has nothing to offer but raw materials. We were lectured on democracy while our leaders were overthrown. We were told to beg for loans while our gold filled your banks. Now you say you need us. Do you understand the irony?" Trump hesitated. "Look, I won't deny the past. Mistakes were made, a lot of mistakes. But we can make a fresh start. You're a strong leader, and people respect you, even if they don't admit it. America doesn't want Africa as a servant. We want Africa as a partner, and I can make that happen." Traoré shook his head slowly. "Partnership, Mr. Trump, is built on respect and equality, not desperation. Not when you call me at midnight because your empire is trembling." The words hung in the air like a verdict. This was more than a phone call. It was a symbol of the new global order. A young African leader, once dismissed as irrelevant, was now holding the cards. And the former leader of the free world was the one asking for terms. In Burkina Faso, word of the call spread quickly through political circles. Ministers whispered that it was proof of what Traoré had said all along. The West needed Africa, more than Africa needed the West. In Washington, the news was treated like a state secret. But leaks were inevitable. Journalists began piecing together the story, and headlines erupted. Trump reaches out to Burkina Faso in midnight plea. Is the dollar's dominance finally crumbling? From Ouagadougou to Wall Street. the new balance of power. For Traoré, the decision was not about whether to help America. It was about what helping would mean for Africa. He gathered his council the next morning. "My brothers," he told them, "we stand at a crossroads. The West, which once colonized us, now asks for our strength. If we respond, it must be on our terms. No more handouts, no more false promises. If America wants Africa, it must accept Africa as an equal." The ministers nodded. One of them, an older veteran of Burkina Faso's independence struggles, spoke with a trembling voice. "All my life I have seen presidents bow before foreign powers. Today I see the foreign powers bow before us. This is justice." Traoré's answer. 2 days later, Trump called again. This time, Traoré was ready with his response. "Mr. Trump," he said, "Burkina Faso is open to dialogue. But understand this. We will not trade our sovereignty for your survival. If there is to be cooperation, it must empower both our peoples. We demand fair trade, investment in African industries, respect for our sovereignty, and an end to the exploitation that has lasted too long. Only then can we talk." There was a pause. Then Trump's voice softened. "I can work with that," he said. It was not a surrender, but it was an acknowledgement that Africa was no longer a silent player in the background of world politics. It was a force to be reckoned with. The ripple effect, the news of Traoré's firm but measured response, electrified Africa. Across the continent, young people celebrated. On social media, hashtags like Africa Rises and Traoré Speaks for Us trended for weeks. Leaders from other African nations began to echo Traoré's demands in their own negotiations with the West. For the first time in centuries, the power dynamic was shifting. In Europe and America, analysts debated whether this was the beginning of the end for Western dominance. Some dismissed it as symbolic. Others warned it was the start of a new global order, with Africa as a central player. History would remember that midnight call as a turning point, a moment when the old world order cracked and a new one emerged. Donald Trump, once the embodiment of Western power, had reached across oceans not to command, but to plead. And Ibrahim Traoré, the young leader from Burkina Faso, had answered with dignity, clarity, and strength. In the streets of Ouagadougou, murals began to appear. They showed Traoré standing tall, holding a scale of justice, while Western leaders extended their hands not as masters, but as equals. The message was unmistakable. Africa was no longer begging for a seat at the table. Africa was building the table, and the world would never be the same.